Hello and welcome to Love from the Other Side. If you are on this video, perhaps you too are in need of hope. We bring you stories from around the world of people who have shared their near-death experiences. Today's experience happened in 1998 and comes to us from an individual who was hit by a car. Let's go ahead and get started. I've been hit by a car traveling at over 30 miles per hour. I did not feel any shock but some sort of electrocution, then darkness. 2 seconds later, I was shot for a few seconds in the center of some kind of tunnel. Then all of a sudden, I instantly stopped. I was a few hundred yards away from the shock, the accident, over the Seine River. I floated. The feeling was very strange, as if I had some difficulty breathing. I tried to breathe again. I did not need it anymore though. It took me a moment to stabilize myself. I felt a very strange energy, as if the air would vibrate and would be denser, and I understood that this energy was life. It was as if there were heat streams circulating in all directions. No more gravity, no heat, no cold. Some kind of well-being pervaded me. What am I doing here? I was going to work, but what am I doing here? Then I reviewed the events. I went out to the cafe, I waited at the crosswalk, and a car headlight was about 1 foot from me. Then blackness, like a mix of panic, sadness, intense fear. But he killed me. Oh my, I'm dead. I immediately thought I should go back in and find my body. But everybody was slowed down. As it were, cars and pedestrians circulated very slowly and sometimes stopped. Some sort of halo or radiating golden, yellow, bright orange light surrounded all these walkers and cars. I could not believe what my eyes saw, but I had no eyes anymore. And there was some kind of ambient hiss, very steady, rather like a permanent, quiet, high-pitched hum. Fear and panic ceaselessly grew. Then, as I wanted to watch more closely, I bent forward. I did not really know what I was, but I had a center of gravity somewhere, leaning forward. I'm propelled in the tunnel again. Surprised by this new shock, I straightened up, and suddenly I immediately stopped, let's say 100 yards away from where I stood previously. Amazing, I said to myself. I summoned up all the courage I had left and I had to try again. I bent forward and again this flash of acceleration. I realized that the tunnel effect was due to my own super rapid movement. I made 4 other attempts until I could control this acceleration each time. More and more I liked this state, even more so that no bodily restrictions existed anymore. But I was to discover later that space and time and physical restrictions did not apply either. I could not believe what my eyes saw. All my life I had been so tied to these restrictions and to my total lack of faith in soul existence, let alone in a superior being. I was about to get a big shock. Once the euphoria of this finding was gone, I repeated to myself, "Oh crap, I'm dead. I'm really dead." I was looking around trying to detect some sign that would reveal it was just a dream. Maybe I would wake up in my bed. I'm really dead. Well, it's over, I said to myself. While I was so astounded to still be myself, I was even more astounded, though, that we aren't just biology, as I was convinced that the universe we produce came from our very existence in this universe, and that, unfortunately, despite my natural curiosity for all religions, this energy would vanish at death. I started to think of my relatives, all of them, one by one. I thought about what they did and what I felt. This feeling of closeness was much more intense than before, but I felt I was unwillingly going away. Then Mum, she'll think, what a misfortune. He goes to work in the morning and at 2 p.m. he dies. The sorrow she was going to feel immersed me in a pain and despair that I have never known before. Such a feeling of powerlessness. I wanted to go and advise her that I did not suffer, and that, indeed, I felt super well, even if I was terrified. but not knowing the possibilities I had in this state, the distance to be covered in acceleration seemed huge to me. Even more so with this acceleration, I did not control anything. I just had the effects as if I were sucked. Then with some kind of cowardice, I said to myself that I was not the first one to die, and that she would understand that life is just that way. But first, with an egotism that was typical of me, I had another project. Now that I could accelerate, I wanted to know what speed I could reach. It seemed easier upwards than towards all of these glows below. And I wanted to see the earth from space so much. I said to myself that I had no more need to eat or sleep. I felt no cold, no heat, and with acceleration, I thought I could travel in the galaxy without any limitations over time or distance. I made my decision. Like the Silver Surfer I go, I deeply thought to myself. Farewell, Mum. Farewell, mankind that so much disappointed me. And farewell to myself, who has not been courageous enough to resist these chronic disparities between humans in pain and suffering. I was ashamed about it, but then with some disgust, I turned upward and bent forward, and the acceleration started. But this time I tried to control it, and I managed to accelerate more progressively. That was incredible. I continually said to myself, I'm dreaming, I'm dreaming, I'm dreaming. I already fancied traveling through the cosmos, and then an infinite power and firm power grabbed me from below. It did not hurt me, though. It just pulled me downward. I just stood face to face with a very vague face in mid-air. I just saw the face. Whereas I had felt so sad and relinquished, with incredible kindness and humor, he said to me, "What are you lugging behind?" He referred to the small outgrowth I had behind my head, at the place where there would have been a bag that one would bear on one's shoulders. As I did not feel this outgrowth there before, turning around, I felt that I got connected. It was some kind of backups of my memory over my whole life, like icons. You just had to look at one to view the memory in the form of a small movie. By touching it, I could also enter it, and I felt the emotion of the memory. Hiding my surprise, I don't know why, I said to myself, "Gee," I told him, "some memories. You don't need it anymore." "But these are just memories I want to keep." "Why?" "To remind me where I came from. I want to explore the universe." Then he looked at my whole bag. We both looked at all the memories I had brought with me. I felt somewhat ashamed, but he steadily reassured me. I felt that he really did not give any importance to what he saw. He just looked at what was there, and he did not judge anything. I still did not understand why I should not bring anything with me. I guess I would not relate to it anymore. However, the more I spoke with this face, the more my memories seemed childish and of no actual interest to me. Then I asked, "How can one travel to other worlds?" "You just need to really want it. That's very easy." "Are there other inhabited planets?" And the answer was, yes, many. I felt in him a knowledge that exceeded by far what I could grasp. I also felt that he was ready to deliver at once everything to me, as if I had some kind of incredible clarity in my thoughts. At that moment, I had the feeling that I understood. I did not know what, though. I was just about to tell him that I was about to leave on a long trip that awaited me, and that I was very happy I had met with him. Out of respect for his kindness, I didn't dare ask him who he was, but I felt he had sensed what I was about to say before I uttered it. Then all of a sudden, a cat iris-shaped light, white and glowing, with quite thin edges like red-orange fused magma, opened mid-sky, and I was violently projected inside of it. After some time, I had the feeling that I had lost the course of events, like a blackout. I raised my head and was instantly made to bow low, down to the ground, as if I were strongly maintained in this bow low position. I was unable to straighten up despite several attempts. I've always been quite a rebel. It was similar to a very powerful gravity force or a huge intangible weight that could crush me on the ground. Then I suddenly felt this pressure instantly stopped. I felt very confused. I was coming back from lunch, just living my everyday life. In addition, I felt I was becoming crazy, and honestly, I began to freak out. All I wanted was this insanity to stop. I was about to cry but couldn't. This time I discreetly had a look. Everything around had a bright glow, and it was pleasantly warm. There were some sort of big white cubes of different sizes. I could make out their ridges, but I couldn't see much as I was at ground level and in a crisis state. I felt that I could go totally confused at any moment. Just in front of me, I saw a very tall being. This being was wholly made of light, with a dazzling whiteness and all over much longer rays that radiated from him. The sweetness of that place was intense. All of a sudden, a feeling that I can only describe as the strongest, purest love overwhelmed me. This is a feeling similar to what we feel on earth when we are much in love, that kind of vibration that makes us vibrate with all of our being. When at last you meet, or you know you are going to meet with your soulmate. I wish everybody would feel that love at least once in their life. This feeling emotion was multiplied by 100. It was indescribable emotional orgasm. I really thought that I was dying, but out of pleasure. It was quite unbearable, and it totally overwhelmed me. I felt, though, it was only a tiny part of what was able to transmit, and that he was very cautious, but for me, it exceeded all I could conceive. I understood what he felt was what I felt, not an emotion of mine, and this love so intense was the love that he had for all mankind, not just for me. That a so powerful being could love us to such an extent, us so primitive, that astounded me, let alone an atheist like me, who believed what he saw and thought that religions were just an ancestral remnant of man's quest for explaining his incomprehensible existence. He made explanations to me without words, but with a voice. That was very odd, and his voice had immense sweetness, but strangely an immeasurable power emanated from it. I sensed him in a limitless power, but first his will. I felt it was very powerful in me. The weight of each word he said sounded like he radiated an incredible power. He said that our intentions are most important to them. This is the question they systematically ask. What was your intention? Believe my words, whatever your religion, they see everything. But more important, they are much more forgiving about our worldly flesh than the companies and denominations which are here on earth. One thing I deeply felt too is that he doesn't like suicide at all, unless you have a very serious reason for that. Their sense of empathy has no limit. All of a sudden, I was not this luminescent vapor anymore, but myself, in body, 20 years younger though. With me was a man wearing a white tunic, about 5 feet 7 inches tall, with black eyes. I sensed that he was uneasy. He went ahead and I followed him. I knew where he was going because I knew the place well. I wondered why he had such a humble look and why he seemed so awkward. Again, I felt he had sensed my thoughts. Without turning back and myself still following him, I saw suddenly that he had a tiny radiant white flashes on the back of his neck and on his shoulders. It was splendid. I had the feeling of being in a Hollywood movie, and we were in a place where, when I was younger, I had been scared one night while I was going home and walking through a park. He said, "What are we here for?" He asked that of me, whereas I did nothing. But I understood that he indeed meant to communicate why this scene was so present in me. I didn't even know myself. There in darkness there was something. I was scared, and I felt the same fear as I did back then. I rather felt I had been scared though, but because now and for a long time I'm not scared by darkness anymore. But this friend went and had a look in the darkness. He came back dashing, lifting his feet tall in the grass, which was not easy with the tunic. I refrained laughing with difficulty. "There's nothing there," he said with a disappointed look on his face. Right then I felt so stupid, not daring to tell him. I knew it, but he was so kind. He took me on board for a complete tour of my life, at such a speed that I hardly had enough time to see and feel the most striking moments. This was incredible, as if he were connected to a network within me. Still at a surprising speed, nothing to do with the dream, in which image is so slow compared to it. It's like upgrading from a 20 megahertz to a 20 gigahertz for PC experts. I could not keep up with the speed of movement. After I was tossed in all directions, everything stopped at once. Then again, this feeling to show up somewhere else. I raised my head. I felt so much more relaxed than when I had arrived. I was in the center on some kind of flat oval surface with white round edges. Everything was white. I sensed that there were many things around, very joyful, laughing, and kind. I felt that my heart wanted to touch them. It was as if a small voice told me that I knew all of this, but I was not allowed to see them. Again, I am facing this glowing being, whom today I call my Lord, as he is my Lord. At that moment, I felt that he separated from me, as if he were talking to someone else, but he stood still in front of me. He was like a sun with a steady and even colored radiance. I could hardly make out a very vague humanoid form, but as soon as I tried to see more, to discern his forms behind this radiance, he appeared so full of love to me that I had to give up because this love dazzled me so much. Not my eyes, but my spirit. Such a knowledge, such a speed of his thoughts. I was outdistanced. It was as if you needed to have a love equal to his in order to stand and see it further. I was far from that level. It was as if I was forced to surrender and give up my desire to understand, because all his being made me so helpless and immersed in a wonderment state. I had no other choice than to look at him and not seek further. Everything was so white. We stayed facing each other for 2 or 3 minutes. I did not sense anything from him. It seemed a long time to me because I did not know what he expected from me. Or maybe he was sparing me at that time. I felt cold pervade me, as if I did not bathe in his blissful light anymore. An awful loneliness feeling too. And I understood that I was going back to my normal state. And the further back I could remember, I had always been cold and I had always been lonely without knowing it. But as he did not hold me anymore, I progressively recovered my mind. I recalled everything, the accident, the trips, my first encounter with him, how he grabbed me when I wanted to go and see space. And as it seemed that his conversation was still going on, I was then well awake. Well, despite all these images that still swirled in my mind, I felt lonely. I tried to say something, but I did not know how to speak. Anyway, I had the feeling that no sounds were uttered. Then I remembered the acceleration indeed. You just have to wish it. So thanks to an intense effort expressed in a sound, the only thing I thought of saying was, "Who are you? How do you do that?" Suddenly, without any moment, I felt this warmth again. The well-being he gave me was huge. I was already addicted to it. I felt well again. I did not want him to let me go again. The way I spoke in this world of sweetness must have sounded like a booming scream because I made a really big effort to utter these few words. But now I have understood that their communication mode is different. Saying nothing, with a gesture of what would be his glowing hand, I was again in an acceleration tunnel, and 1 second after I entered my body, with the same violence as if when I had left it. I immediately regained consciousness. I was lying down in the middle of the road, unable to move. The car was on the pavement. It had rammed a post. The most puzzling thing is that the driver is supposed to have immediately gotten out of his car to see whether I was still alive. But when I opened my eyes, he was not out of his car. Indeed, this adventure, this dream, I still don't know, it lasted less than 5 seconds. That's the time the driver needed to get out of his car. 3 months of recovery later, my inner life has drastically changed, and so did my faith in humankind. But since then, I still feel a bit cold and often feel somewhat lonely, even in a group, because I have never told this story to anybody. When I started searching on the internet, I burst into tears, as I understood there are many similar accounts. However, I believe you need strong psychological stamina to live with it in our society. When I think of my Lord, I feel like a sweet warmth pervades my body from the inside, something I never felt before. Love each other. Sure, even if it's impossible, that we could love each other the way that they love us. Well, that is the end of that profound experience, and I am glad that you took your time to join us here today. And if you haven't done so yet, I would really appreciate you considering being the newest subscriber to our channel. Love from the other side. Until next time, God bless.